Okay, so here we have a empty web IDE, and now let's say we start with a project from template, and we start with a regular multi-target application project. We give it a project name, so let's call this one regular DB project, and we just keep all the defaults, press finish, and now we will have an empty project. It only has a YAML file. Let's open it. You can see there is almost nothing in here. Now we are going to add an SAP HANA database module, and let's call that database module DB. We do not give it a schema name. The rest of the versions we keep the same. Namespace, let's put the namespace on DB. So now you see the YAML file has changed. You also see that the database module has been added. And so the YAML file refers to that module, which is called DB. It's of type HANA database module, HDB. The path is DB as well, because that's the folder name. And it requires HDI-DB. And if you go to the resources section, you can see that this name refers to an HDI container name with a service name that will be generated of type HDI container. Now let's say that we want to now use Data Warehouse Foundation functionality. This would mean we need some Data Warehouse Foundation modules added to the project. But first we would need to enable the Data Warehouse Foundation in the Web IDE. So we go to the settings and then we go to the feature section. Now if I scroll down, you see that Data Warehouse Foundation is turned off. I turn it on, I press save, and now I refresh the Web IDE. So now let's go back to the development environment again. Now we could manually add all the data warehousing folders and files here, but that would be way too much effort. So instead, first we make a new project from template based on the Data Warehouse Foundation project or Data Warehouse Foundation template, and then we use those files to create a new project. So let's just call this project DWF template. And now we have some settings to make. User authentication, we turn this off because this will not work in the Web IDE. Also, I turn off SSL validation and I keep turned off the static service names. I also don't have to build this right now. So I press next and finish. And now our Data Warehouse Foundation template is generated. And you will see I have a backend module, a database module, and a Data Warehouse Foundation module. Whereas in my regular DB project, I only have a DB folder. DB is the HANA database module, just like database in the DWF template is there the HANA database module. So how do we now get the Data Warehouse Foundation objects to our regular database project? Well, we can start pretty simple by copying over files. But first I want to make sure that if our YAML file changes the wrong way we still know how it was before. So I will delete this copy later, but right now, so I just did a copy on the YAML file and I paste in the YAML file once more. So we have this right now as a backup. Now I start copying the modules that I need. So we have backend, we have Data Warehouse Foundation. Uh, those are the two modules that we need to add. So I'm going maybe a bit too fast, so I've selected two folders, I press copy, and then inside the regular DB project, I press paste. And now you see the two modules have been added. So these are exact copies. Now if I open up the YAML file, nothing has been changed here yet. So we have to make some changes there. But first, we also have something sitting in the database folder that we also need to copy over. So if you open up the source in the Data Warehouse Foundation template project, we have a folder called Data Store, which has some mandatory CDS definitions that you will need to create native data store objects. So you don't need to change anything in there. You basically never have to change anything in there, but you need that content. Then there is the defaults directory that defines authorizations that are needed for the native data store object to work. So these are functions in the HANA database. They're defined here inside this role. So execute privileges on that DSO activate procedure. You need those privileges in your container. Basically, this defaults folder makes sure that you are getting these privileges. Then there is an NDSO folder. There's just some demo content in there. You don't need that per se. And there's a source data folder that also has some demo content. Basically, you would need the source data and the NDSO folder together if you want the NDSO examples to work. In our case, let's just copy this over. Okay. Maybe one more thing to check here in the defaults folder. Yes, there is a namespace file. So I actually clicked this little button up here. By default, it's turned to not show any hidden files. I want to see the hidden files because I want to see the namespace files. And in every folder, a namespace file has been, the namespace file has been defined with a specific namespace name, so it doesn't include the subfolder name, like data store or defaults or NDSO or source data. Meaning that if we copy over these folders to our regular DB project, it's going to work just fine. It's not going to be colliding with any existing namespace files. So this one we will copy over to the source folder in our regular DB projects DB module folder. There we go. Now additionally, there is also a package.json file in the database folder. This one we also need to copy over. Needs to be copied in the root of the database modules folder. Oh, wait. We already have this file. Is it the same? No, it looks slightly different. So let's then take the content and copy it over in here. Just to be sure that I'm working in the right file, I will link the workspace to the editor. So now I can see I just copied over from to the package.json in the regular DB project from the package.json in the Data Warehouse Foundation template. So let's close these files that I still had open. Now I copied over the different files from the database module. We already copied over the backend and Data Warehouse Foundation module. So what else we need to change is here in the database module folder there is a .j directory where we have to open up the project.json folder. And we scroll now to the right, you can see that there is this analytics service with a data warehouse attribute set to false. We need to set this one to true. Save the file. And now we need to work on the YAML file. So I'm opening up the YAML file in the regular DB project. And what identifies the project is the ID here on top. So there's an ID, a schema version, and a regular version. What we could do, what is probably the easiest, is that we actually take the YAML file from the Data Warehouse Foundation template and just replace the ID to match up with our project, and to replace the module section with the names and with the name and the path of our database module, because that one is different. It's called DB in our regular DB project. It's called database in the Data Warehouse Foundation template. So let's try and do this, and let's just start by deleting all the content here. Now let's open up the YAML file from the Data Warehouse Foundation template. We select all the records in there, we copy, and we paste into the regular DB's project YAML file. I'm going to close off the Data Warehouse Foundation YAML, and I'm going to open my copy. So the copy still has the module names, or the module name for the HANA database module as it is right now. First of all, let's take this ID and copy this over. And now we see that there are descriptions, and there are other descriptions and names mentioned inside this YAML file, and we could of course replace all these at once. We press Ctrl H, the replace function, where we say replace every instance of DWF template with regular DB project. I press the all button, and now all these values have been replaced. What else do we need to look at? We need to look at the database name right here. So what we know is that the path should be different. The path should not be database, it should be DB. I think the name, this is just a name. We can keep it the same. It's just the path that we need to change here. Let's scroll down to the resources section. Let's see if we have any differences there. So we see we have this regular DB project container, which has an HDI container name. This is fine. The type is fine, and the service keys are also fine. These are just references to the other components that we have inside our project now. So let's see if the changes we made are enough. I'm going to save the file. Okay, I pressed Ctrl S, but you could also press the save button right here. Let's close these files now, and let's try to actually make a build. Let me see if the project is actually assigned to a space. Yes, it is. So now I can try a build. I'm going to start by building the DB folder. Good. So this build succeeded. Now let me also build the Data Warehouse Foundation folder. And let us build the backend folder. This also succeeded. So now let's start the backend module, and then we can see if all our functions are working fine. So I right click the backend folder, I go to run, then run as, and click Node.js application. This is usually a one-time action. Next time I'm starting or logging on to the web IDE, this app should already be running in the background, monitoring my database folder and letting the Data Warehouse Foundation module know which objects I have in my database. There we go, the application is running, so I can click away that part of the screen. Let's now go to the Data Warehouse Foundation module, and let's see if the task chain right here now shows the native data store object that is defined in the how shall we call that? The sample folder, the NDSO folder of my database module. So there we have a sales order and a sales order table definition or NDSO definition, and we have a sales order flow graph, and you can see that in the task chain these objects show up. Then I should also be able to build a new one. Let's just give it any name. And let's see if I can select now the right objects. Yes, I can select a sales order native data store object here. I should also be able to select the flow graph. Yes, I can also select the flow graph. So the task chain works. Other thing to check is, do our native data store objects work? So let's say I just create a new native data store object in my source folder. Let's also call that one test. We see that this native data store object showed up. So now I can drag in a native data store object. I should be able now to delete this context. I can go into the native data store object and define it. So I'm just giving it any number of fields with any name. And now let's try to build our database container. There we go. Our native data store object has been built. And now in our test chain, I should be able to now actually find this native data store object. There you go, that's DSO_1. That's it. So this is how you can add Data Warehouse Foundation functionality to an existing Web IDE project where you only have a HANA database module defined. Thank you for watching.